Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. Today I've got another community replay for you guys which happens around 1650 MMR and was sent in by Babyflubber. So thank you to Babyflubber for giving us this replay, and the whole theme about it is going to be crossfires, which can be very tricky, and also utilizing speed to your advantage. So I mean, it won't be really a surprise that Babyflubber here will be picking the speed specialist. For Tyler, we have the Saber Crawler pack, which is very solid in the meta, especially with amplifying cores. You can put those on hounds, make sure you one-shot crawlers, and you'll generally have a good time. However, Babyflubber has a very good counter pack into this specific opener. We have Sledgehammers and Void Eyes, all mid-sized units, things that Sabers don't really like dealing with. I mean, they can kill, you know, an odd Sledge or Void Eye here and there, but it just takes way too long for them to get through entire packs of them. So that paired with the speed specialist actually means that he can play aggressively here. I mean, you could set up this way either way, whether you're a speed specialist or not, but the bonus movement speed does help a lot in terms of pressuring the tower when you're playing units that are a bit slower, right? Sledgehammers, Void Eyes, not exactly known for their inherent movement speed. On the other side, we have a bit of an aggressive play now. I would say you should always buy hounds in this case if you're Tyler. Even though hounds aren't fantastic into Sledgehammers and Void Eyes, they just scale better, they're more aggressive, they're faster, they're harder to kill late game than Arclights. So for those reasons, you should just play hounds. It's not like Arclights have a much better matchup into Sledgehammer and Void Eye. It's kind of, you know, neither of them really like shooting at these units. So you might as well go for the better, you know, scaling option. And you've got the small amp cores anyway. Both players here, of course, with crawlers to start. And we do have a crossfire, so both players on the opposite sides of the board. And they're going to be pushing into, you know, these first towers, get an immediate debuff. And then typically it'll come down to who can kind of defend their first tower best, or who can at least make sure that they get a well-timed secondary debuff. Because it's not just about pushing into this first tower, it's also very much about can you get to the second one and make sure that that debuff helps you when both of your armies collide in the middle. So that is what this whole replay is going to be about. Now round one obviously goes over to Babyflubber. As I mentioned, Sledgehammer Void Eye, very powerful round one into this specific opener, so it's no surprise really that he manages to take the victory. Round two, we get a very straightforward unit drop. Both players here should pick Phantom Ray, and I think both players do. Reason being, neither of them have anti-air, and everything else really is covered already, right? Tyler already has Chaff Clear, so Fire Badger Hound, not that useful. Both players have ample ground-based mid-sized units and DPS, so Steel Ball isn't really something you want. And yeah, Phantom Ray is just a lot better here. It kind of is the same as buying a Phoenix on round two, which is a very common thing as well. Fast air units, lots of DPS, generally going to help you a lot when you're trying to push into these towers, which often will get fortified early. And we can already see this for Babyflubber. So he decides to go for a tower level here, whereas Tyler just puts a Fang behind the tower. I think if you want to do this, you should probably put it kind of beside your tower, slightly sticking out. That way some Fangs will go forward and actually prevent, you know, this pack of units from instantly targeting your tower and taking it down. You will want to grab a level as well, but I can imagine that sometimes this is a bit hard to do on round two, or to find the resources to do that. We already have a big Sledgehammer flank here as well. Now, I don't think you should immediately be doing this because there's no real reason to. Naturally, Tyler did add a Fang, so now you are pulling at least something and opening up that tower, but you shouldn't go for that type of flank if you haven't seen any commitment yet from your opponent. The moment that you do, it makes sense to try and pull stuff away so you get easier access to the first debuff, but otherwise it would probably be better to just invest those deployments into perhaps trying to stall the right side. Leveling the tower is fine, but generally speaking, you want to at least try and take out stuff like the crawlers. If you can take out almost all of the enemy chaff before, you know, your armies engage, that'll usually help out. And you can see here that Babyflubber manages to get the second tower debuff. And that's often what these crossfires come down to, is who can get a well-timed, or who can get, just in general, a second tower debuff. And here you can see for Tyler, it didn't happen. And so he will lose this round pretty convincingly as well. Round number 3, advanced power system shows up. Tyler immediately picks it. And I think Babyflubber here will do the same, just to make sure that he has the double stacked speed. Doesn't do so, actually. Skips it. Goes for improved firepower control system. I mean, that's a perfectly fine thing to go for as well. Very powerful item onto the Phantom Rays, and he does manage to pick up an immediate level. So the boost in DPS here should be quite nice. We have double tower enhancement already for Tyler. Maybe a little bit preemptive, I would say, because it does mean that he has to expend a lot of cash, and it doesn't leave him with a lot. In fact, I think all he does here is buy 2 more chaff units, 2 crawlers, which is just not ideal, or a crawler and an arclight, I guess. Which is just not amazing for round 3. Ideally, I think you would want to perhaps buy another arclight over here, which I guess you could just move, and maybe start buying more anti-air, because the enemy phantoms are getting a bit out of control here, right? You are down a level on your Phantom Rays, so you can't really handshake anymore and say, well, hopefully my Phantom Rays will trade out with yours, because even if they lock on early, the level advantage might still mean that you end up losing the fight. Right side tower here goes down pretty quickly for Tyler, and this time he does have at least a few crawlers that head over to the second tower, while his first one takes a while to go down now that it's been doubly enhanced. So this does work out, but now the question is, how much can these Phantom Rays do against their level 2 counterparts, which also have that improved firepower control system? The debuff is well timed, I will say that. So perhaps this is just completely fine. In fact, it does look like that will be the case. And, well, we do manage to win. Very nearly things go wrong there, but I guess Tyler at least would have had some fangs as well to back him up. So he manages to turn things around very nicely on round 3 and make sure that he doesn't go down too low on hit points in this early game. Round number 4 rolls around, and we have additional deployment slot as a card that immediately stands out. Portable shield here is something you could pick up as well, which is what Babyflubber goes for, so he really seems to prioritize the items for some immediate power spike rather than perhaps the late game value that you might get from advanced power system and additional deployment slot. Sledgehammers with this item are very scary, hard to deal with, and they tend to force a bit of a committed response. So I do like the pickup here for Babyflubber, just trying to make sure that, you know, he really has that little edge in the matchup. Tyler, though, does manage to grab the level as well on the Phantom Ray, so things are somewhat evened out in the air. However, Babyflubber tries to stay ahead by going for more Phantom Rays and clicking Stealth Cloak immediately. I think it's a bit early to do this. There are only 2 Phantom Ray packs on the board, and I think that's just generally speaking too low for almost any unit to justify a tech pickup, unless it's exceptionally cheap or they are really big units like Titans or Giants. But for 200 costs, you want to have a few more. Also, putting this Phantom Ray on the right, yes, it does manage to get an insta-lock on a Sabertooth and take it down, but you probably would have wanted to pair it with at least, you know, a chaff unit to buy some time and maybe some chaff clear to try and make sure that they don't get stuck on crawlers, because you could get more value out of this air unit in this scenario. So just putting that one Phantom Ray there and investing a tech into it, it's a bit of a shame, right, with how quickly it goes down. It just doesn't quite manage to get its full potential out. So in this scenario, I probably would have either like put it further back, but at least try and pair it with, you know, some chaff clear and some chaff, as you should always do, right, in Mechabellum. Try and make sure that you have pairs of chaff clear, DPS, and chaff all together so they can work as a unit. We do get a round win here, though, for Babyflubber. So despite perhaps a slight inaccuracy here, his board is still a lot stronger. And I think the main reason is that it's kind of a slow round, right? Like we have a Rhino over here. We have another Rhino here on the deep flank. This was kind of the same thing as I mentioned earlier with Babyflubber. These deep flanks on the side where, you know, your opponent is fortifying a tower, they don't really achieve that much, but you're still putting a 200 cost unit there. And same thing over here, right? We have a 200 cost unit over here just to try and deal with a crawler. In fact, our Phantom Ray is being pulled, our crawlers are being pulled. You might as well just put maybe something like an arc light or whatever, and at least try to beacon these air units forward so you get to this tower as quick as possible and you can start making your way to the second tower as well. Generally speaking, it's just this doesn't achieve anything. That's just 2 deployments and 300 resources that are pulling away 1 crawler, which is just not enough, right? You need to either use those resources and deployments to make your main push more powerful, or to try and stall your weak side tower, right? Try and catch these crawlers, take some of them down. Doesn't matter if you don't win that side or defend it fully, but at least try and stall a little bit. Round number 5, Underground Threat here shows up. Bunch of cards here that are justifiable. Improved Firepower Control System, very good as well. Babyflubber goes for it again, so he does have quite a few Phantom Rays now with items, as well as that Sledgehammer pack that picked up a level. Another thing you could try and pick is Quick Teleport, although both players already have a good amount of units on the flanks, and I think generally speaking, you shouldn't be putting more than 2 or 3 deployments on a flank. So if you're already there, maybe, you know, it's not worth going for quick TP anymore. I will say as well, here on the right side, that crawler, I believe, was already there, and Babyflubber decided to just put 1 Phantom Ray in front of the flank. It's kind of the same as on that front line, right? You want to pair your DPS with some chaff and some chaff clear, because now the Phantom Rays get stuck, and yes, they do eventually take out the Rhino, but they could have probably done that a lot faster and helped out, you know, taking down even more units over here if they were paired with, let's say, a Sledgehammer or an Arc Light, something of the sort. Both armies do go over to the second tower, and Babyflubber manages to take his second debuff first, which might not end up working out for him that well, because now we have the second debuff coming in for Tyler, and that is very well timed as both armies are right about to collide, and now Babyflubber has to deal with 9 seconds of debuff. So as you can see, things don't go too well. 2 Phantom Rays are still alive. There's no anti-air left here for the blue side of the field, and it will be a round win for Tyler. He also added a Phantom Ray here. I think that's a good pickup. Trying to make sure he has some alternative anti-air, something that might be a little bit safer than the Phantom Rays that he has. In round number 6, we have the second round of unit reinforcements. Mustang, pretty safe pickup here. Doesn't necessarily achieve that much, I would say. They're not the best unit into sledgehammers or crawlers, so I'm not convinced that it was the right pick. In fact, I don't think it is for Tyler here. It's a simple pickup, and yes, eventually Mustangs will be useful, but if you're up against mid-sized units and crawlers, they generally won't achieve anything, and the Farseer that he picked up already kind of deals with any air threats you might have. Even if a Wasp pack shows up, Farseer should be able to deal with that. So I think in this scenario, it would have been a lot better for him to go for something like the Sandworm, because Sandworm is very good into sledgehammers. And generally speaking here, the DPS is not the highest for Babyflubber. He also goes for some Mustang. I think for him, it makes a bit more sense, because there are quite a few Fangs, at least, on the front lines. And anti-air is maybe a little bit of a concern here, because the Phantom Rays could die like they did last round, and then you run out of options to kill the enemy air units. So that's kind of, yeah, the assessment there. We do finally get some chaff here in front of the Phantom Rays, and we do pair it up with some chaff clear as well, so this all looks a lot better. Flank has been dealt with. Both towers are now level 3. And I would say that maybe there are some units that are a little bit too far back again here. You could just put them a bit more over here on the tower height. That way they don't have to travel as far after they're done dealing with whatever was on the flank. And yeah, the speed for Babyflubber here definitely does help a lot, as he gets the first tower debuff. But will he get the second one is the question. Doesn't look like Tyler will. Most of his units have been dealt with. And you can see the power, right, of just being able to get rid of all of the crawlers before they get to your first tower. It makes it a lot harder for them to, 1, take it down, because crawlers actually have a fair bit of DPS, and 2, it means that there's not that many fast units left to get to the second tower once they're done finishing off the first one. And in this case, that doesn't even happen. So Tyler here going to take a lot more damage, and the main reason is there's just no great counter currently to the sledgehammers, and it means it takes far too long for him to get through everything. He also doesn't have an amazing amount of chaff clear, right? We have 3 arc lights with range. A 4th one now gets picked up and put on the weak side of the board. So this is something I likely would have wanted to see a bit more earlier on in the fight. Try and put, you know, some chaff and then some chaff clear to catch a few of these crawlers. And currently a lot of speed is being stacked. I also would say that, generally speaking, you shouldn't put a crawler right in front of an enemy crawler unless you are planning to click replicate, or you're buying them in at level 2, right? And you're very, very sure that you can win that fight. That would be possible. You could try and put a rhino here to block the sledgehammers and then have the crawlers fight. But Tyler doesn't have replicate or drill on the bar, so he can't really go for a crawler fight, and in that case it makes no sense to put these crawlers in front of the enemy crawlers like that without anything to help them out. There needs to be an arc light back there, or it should have been something like a rhino with whirlwind, but this does not achieve anything. It's just a waste of a deployment. On this side as well, there's just too heavy of an investment on the flank, right? Rule of thumb is 2 or 3 deployments, and it has to have a reason. This has no reason anymore, right? Yes, you're pulling some of the units apart, but it's a bit excessive at this stage. And your opponent will just be able to missile out these crawlers on the flank as the round goes on. In fact, even now, round 7, round 8, it is very, very valid to just missile all those crawlers on the flank, because you get rid of 3 enemy deployments, and that's honestly a very big part of their army. Either way, the arc lights now are doing a lot better. They did manage to get some levels, and the flank does distract quite nicely. So with the help of the sabers, which picked up levels and secondary armaments to try and deal with the sledgehammers a little bit better, Tyler does manage to get the very first debuff. Now, Babyflubber, some of his air units are smart enough, though, to go over to that second tower. But we'll say the same for Tyler. One of his phantoms also goes and heads over to the second debuff. Will there be enough left, though? It doesn't really seem like that will be the case. These Phantom Rays are completely out of control, and while Tyler does manage to get a debuff, there is simply far too much left on the left side of the board here. And it means that Babyflubber, again, going to deal a lot of damage. Tyler now down to 1,000, which is a scary territory to be in. But we do have unit reinforcements to help out, and again, Sandworm shows up, which for me is a standout unit here against these sledgehammers. I think that's the main problem that we currently have. We don't have anything that really likes to get rid of those, and we could use a little bit more frontline for things like our Mustangs in this scenario. So Worm seems perfectly fine. Worm as well for Babyflubber. I mean, it's just a really good unit this late. Exceptionally hard to deal with. There aren't that many units that are specialized at getting rid of sandworms, and if you have something like Mechanical Division, it's a no-brainer, really. I like the positioning here in the corner. Looks really good. Can't really get missiled or locked onto because the worm will just burrow. So, yeah, fantastic. Looks great. He should be able to get into this tower pretty rapidly. On this side, I think the worm should be more with the main army. Once again, like, we do not want one crawler pack to pull away all of our units. Thankfully, Tyler does realize this, and he puts his worms more on the main board, which looks really good, and he'll be able to push into this tower a bit more aggressively and make sure that Babyflubber has to do something about the sandworms. Oil gets purchased for Babyflubber to try and slow things down. Now, I would put this a bit further back, just on my own side of the field, really, because at this stage of the game, it's not that uncommon for aggressive players to put down shields to try and prevent these type of plays, or to try and prevent aggressive missiles. So yeah, you should just put this safely on your side of the field where you're guaranteed that it will land. Round number 8. Here we go. Left side is pushing in exceptionally quickly now for Babyflubber. I mean, we have mech rage on the sledgehammers, we have mech rage on the crawlers as well, so obviously a lot of speed, and you can see that even the level 4 tower there does not stand much of a chance. It doesn't, you know, give a very long debuff, only 3 seconds, but it allows the rest of the units to get over to the second tower, which hasn't been leveled. Interestingly here, Tyler does manage to get the debuff first, as, well, he's managed to get advanced power system himself, so the speed is kind of evened out. And we can see that now the armies collide. There was a second debuff for Babyflubber, but it doesn't seem like it does quite enough, as there are so many tanky units on the field that Tyler's army is just a lot stronger here. And the sabers that were kept for Tyler now suddenly get to do something, because they get to shoot at the worm that was picked up by Babyflubber. So finally, Tyler now striking back and kind of evening things out, even more than evening things out, as the blue side is now sub 1,000 hit points. Round number 9, and nothing here stands out except perhaps the acid blast, which Babyflubber does pick up. Because both sides are still in this really pure crossfire with very little investment, right, on the weak sides, you can use the acid like Babyflubber does now to try and, you know, kill off some of the bigger units. And you could do this for Tyler as well. In fact, you could just put that acid over here and try to catch some of these sandworms as they push in. Something else to mention is this level 5 tower. I think, generally speaking, it is not worth to try and level a tower to level 5, because you're spending so much extra money just to go from 3-second debuff to 2-second debuff. You might as well just make your other tower level 3, which I think costs the same, but it makes a much, much bigger difference, right? It's usually the second debuff at this stage of the game that really decides who gets to win. So, as a rule of thumb, I think generally, once you get to a level 4 tower, there's no real point in leveling it even further, unless you really have nothing else to do with your cash. But I think both players here do, right? You can buy more worms, you can grab first, second attack and defense enhancements, and just use your money in a little bit of a better fashion. Right side acid lands very nicely, but the acid effect by itself doesn't necessarily do all that much. And you can see that all of the units here will just manage to get through. Right side tower only level 3, perhaps that should have been level 4, but neither army really colliding that much yet. We do have all of these crawlers now, though, getting over to that second tower. And so this is kind of what you need to prevent. Sometimes you can even put arc lights or chaff clear units somewhere over here, so they catch all of these crawlers when they head over. You can even put down some missiles in the middle to achieve the same thing, but trying to make sure that those crawlers do not get to your second tower is what it has to be all about, right? That is what you have to prevent, because that is what is causing you to perhaps lose these rounds. Things are still pretty even in the middle. The sabers are doing a great job here of fighting the sandworm, and perhaps Tyler here can get a win. It's going to be awfully close. Phantom Rays for now a lot more powerful for Babyflubber, and it looks like they might make the difference. A couple of sledgehammers still alive as well, and obviously with all the levels, those things have become a bit of a nightmare. And indeed, it will be a victory, but only a minor one for the blue side, meaning that we do have to send this to round number 10 to see who gets to win. Round number 10, and of course, we do have some big red spells with Nuke now being picked up for Tyler. Being used on the left side, I mean, yeah, I think that does make sense. You probably won't be able to catch the worms, but if you can kill the sledgehammers and maybe even that Phantom Ray, which has been doing an awful lot, I mean, 600,000 plus damage across these 10 rounds, it has been an absolute monster. That should be very good. Babyflubber going to use it on the right side, same thing, really. Now, when you see this, you should probably buy a mobile beacon and try to beacon away, or at least around where you expect your opponent to put the nuke, right? Especially if your opponent is also leveling the tower a bunch, like here, it's not worth it anymore to send your full army into it. You might as well try and send your army back and try to defend your tower, or perhaps try and go for the diagonal here and target that weaker side of the board. We do get burst as well on the Phantom Rays, and both players here should just be missiling the flanks, right? This is something that you have to do late game, and it's one of the punishes to these type of heavy flanks. I often see people just not using missiles at all. You can very easily cripple an army that way, right? 3 deployments just gone off round start is going to make a big impact. And it's the same thing over here, right? Just getting rid of these high-level crawlers, double-teched, triple-teched even now, as Replicate has been picked up as well, is going to make a massive, massive difference. Because now all the crawlers just get to go in, they get to replicate, make even more crawlers, and then you have to deal with that, you know, towards the mid-stages and end stages of the round. You can just prevent yourself that headache by missiling them. Nuke lands really nicely there for Tyler, and I think it catches out at least some units for Babyflubber, but maybe not quite as many. And now it just comes down to how much can these worms really do. One of the worms from Tyler somehow ended up on the left, and it seems like perhaps there's just not going to be enough anti-air left for Tyler to deal with all the remainder of these Phantom Rays, and that has been a bit of a concern, right? Using Mustangs to deal with high-level Phantom Rays tends to be not the best, and Babyflubber didn't even pick up armor, which he has on the bar, but that would have made things a lot harder. And it looks like, in the end, it will just be the anti-air here victorious for Babyflubber. And if he can keep some of the worms alive, I think he might even be able to just win this. In fact, I'm pretty sure he will. Only 750 hit points, and indeed, that will be enough to close things out on round 10. So, an interesting fight. Full-on crossfire, and both players just kind of committing to the, you know, their respective pushes and just leveling the tower. Couple of takeaways. I think it is generally fine to level your tower. Maybe not to level 5. You can stop at level 4. But try and at least put some chaff clear, right? To try and catch these crawlers. Don't go for super heavy flank investments. If your opponent does, don't be afraid to missile them out in the later stages of the game. Other things is that what you have to worry about is this secondary tower going down. Now, Babyflubber eventually did put a level there, so that's very nice. I think Tyler could have done the same to try and prevent, you know, that second debuff from hurting too much. And, I mean, otherwise, it's kind of just some matchup-based things, right? Mustang pickup, maybe not the best in these scenarios because none of these units are that vulnerable to them. So instead, right, try and focus on something like the Sandworm. We could try and play back round number 10 for Tyler here, or 9 rather, where there was the acid, because I'm kind of interested to see what would have happened if Tyler went for a play like that himself. So let's pick that up. Let's go for lone, temp speed, temp range. Now we know that acid was offered, so let's make sure that we do put down the shields. And then we're going to put the acid probably somewhere over here to try and catch the enemy units. We even have oil available. I didn't even mention this, but in general, if you have oil available and your opponent is pushing in aggressively in a headbutt or in a crossfire or whatever, try and see if you can make plays happen with this, right? So let's just layer the acid and the oil on top of one another, slow down all of these ground units, and, you know, try and make sure that they stay in the acid a bit longer. We're also going to be missiling everything, because this is something I want to showcase, where if your opponent is just playing everything on the line, missiles can be your best friend. And it looks like you're using a lot of money, which you kind of are, but, you know, I'll happily pay 200, 250 to convincingly win a round in the later stages of this game. Now, with that, let's pick up a level on the worm. Let's maybe grab another sandworm. We can put that over here. And then perhaps just a late crawler somewhere on this side of the field. I'm going to put the underground threat over here as well. And then I think that'll just be all she wrote. We can even put a missile over here if you want to. And I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's just see how this plays out. So Replicate comes out, which makes our missiles even more valuable. And now you can already see that over here, right? There's not this onslaught of crawlers barreling towards the tower. And it also frees up our arc lights here with the oil slow to try and just get rid of some of this chaff as it's moving in. We get the tower debuff as well, which helps out the arc lights even more. And this already looks a lot better. In fact, some of our units have turned and they are now attacking the enemy units as they sit inside of the oil. We get the second debuff while our opponent has not managed to get over, and now all of our units are coming through with the advanced power system, with the temp speed, and this is looking a lot better. In fact, it is a extremely convincing win for Tyler, as he deals almost 3,000 damage, and that would have ended the game. So These are the type of things that you should be looking for. Don't be afraid to use those missiles in the late game, and don't be afraid to use spells either, right? If your right side is completely empty, you can just put down acid, put down oil, without it really hurting your own units as much. And yeah, I hope you guys found this interesting. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about it. You know, have you had any problems dealing with crossfires like this, or do you love trying to go for these type of speedy compositions, right, with mech rage sledges and mech rage crawlers? Let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.